and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have the pleasure of getting some time to speak with our mayor, Matthew Shoemaker. Welcome, Matthew.
Thanks for having me.
So what a specific time to have you attend our studio, a full year in office. How do you reflect upon this? I mean, how can you summarize?
Well, it's been an interesting year. It's had its challenges for sure, and there have been some proposals that have seen the light of day that I wanted to get done, that I campaigned on during the campaign last summer. And so I think it's had some productive times, it's had some challenging times, and that's what you'd expect from any year. So hopefully the next year will bring more of the productive times, fewer of the challenging times, but we'll see what lies ahead. Right.
Well, certainly, and saying that there have been some challenging times, our community finds itself, battling some very significant situations, crises even having been described as housing, for example, substance abuse, increased rates of crime. So certainly you have made a number of commitments during your platform time last summer, and you've taken some very specific actions. Most recently, in fact, this past Monday, because one of your platform commitments was to address the housing crises. Now, I do know that the Ontario government, and you have accepted, has set a very aggressive target in terms of the creation of housing. Talk to me about that. So I know that City Council on Monday approved a housing action plan. What does that look like?
So the Housing Action Plan really is a number of specific things that the city wants to be able to do to accelerate or incentivize housing from being to be built in our community. So those are things like, excuse me, looking at the availability of grants for people who are building in older neighborhoods that need revitalization, looking for some other types of subsidy, whether it's an like a phasing in of property taxes or the availability of undermarket land within the community in places that are along major transit corridors. So the idea is that the development of housing should happen where there are already significant activity hubs. So when you think of places like Core Road, places like Trunk Road, places like the entire downtown, I would say, and Pine Street, Northern Avenue type area. So all those places that already have lots of activity, have a good mix of commercial and residential, would benefit from a more densely populated neighborhood. So places like the new Legion building, places like the proposed Trinity Tower at the corner of Northern Avenue and Great Northern Road are densely populated already. They have lots of services nearby. And so the idea is to accelerate people living in those areas and incentivize people living in those areas because there is already good services surrounding them.
Okay, now I do also know that there have been some regulations proposed, to say the least, with regards to the creation of affordable housing, right? Because certainly that is posing some concern in the community, and for good reason. Of these 1,500 houses or units that have been committed to, will these be falling in line with affordable housing?
So the incentives that were approved Monday, or the structure of incentives that was approved Monday, I would say, because we're waiting on funding from the federal and provincial government to actually figure out the dollars and cents of it. But the structure of incentives is that a place that is below market or affordable, and those are two different things, would have a greater incentive than a place that was just all market rents, that was just rented to anybody who was willing to pay whatever the market rent is. So if you are building a residential tower like the Legion, for example, and you include incentive, or you include some affordable rent component to it, the amount that you could be eligible for will be higher than if you're just building a tower that you're going to rent to the public without affordable units in it.
So this would be speaking then to the organizations that own the buildings that are being created. So the incentives, just so that I can understand, so the incentives then are provided to the people, the owners of the properties, which gives them, as you're saying, the incentive to create more affordable opportunities for citizens.
Yeah, and there'd have to be, so if they accepted that they would receive an incentive in order to develop affordable housing, there would be a commitment on there that for, either the lifetime of the building or for a specific period of time, some specific number of units would be maintained as affordable units.
Okay, so they can't just change their mind all of a sudden. Got
Correct.
you. Okay, fantastic. So now, so that was just approved, and you're waiting on dollars from the federal and provincial government. Is there any even vague timeline as to when this could start, like the creation of these units, or?
So we've got a number of units that are already going up that are that have applied for and received funding from the federal government directly.
Right. So this would be like the Legion and Trinity
the Trinity
Towers.
Towers, and I believe the building in behind the Algonquin, the old Terra Hall property.
Yes.
And so those are federal incentives. Those are available now for anybody that wants to apply. The municipal incentives, we've passed the action plan. We expect that early in the new year we'll hear about our application to the federal government, and hopefully by the building season to come, we'll have incentives in place for developments.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, some of the other business that came out of City Council that, like I said, I went through your commitments. So there is now a new vision for the waterfront that has been. So it's open to the community now to provide their feedback. So in the community providing feedback, is it, what would you like to see on the waterfront, or is there already a vision that's going to be put forward for people to comment on?
So I think it's a little bit of a mixture of both.
Okay.
Obviously, we want input on what the community wants to see on the waterfront. I've proposed that we investigate putting a downtown beach, for example, in Bellevue Park or elsewhere on the waterfront. But really, there are specifics that are in the waterfront development plan that we want comment on, and then there is the kind of open invitation to provide suggestions on the development of the waterfront and what people would like to see on it.
Now, the urban beach, now I know that this has been like I won't say a pet project because I feel that kind of makes it small, but this has been a particularly recurring sort of theme for a lot of what you have visioned for the Soo. What does an urban beach look like? Like, what is that?
So an urban beach is a place that is near the water, but isn't a swimming beach. You wouldn't go to it like Pointe du Chene, for example, to hop in the water. And so it attracts people to a beach-like environment without having to go on the outskirts of the city, either at Pointe du Chene or north to Pancake and Harmony to experience a beach-like environment. It really opens up the possibility of being at a beach to urban city people, and it's if we develop it at Bellevue Park as has been initially proposed, then I think there would be easy access to transit to get there.
Certainly.
It would welcome visitors who are either on cruise ships or who are coming in on the Agua Canyon tour train.
Right.
It would be another activity for them to be able to enjoy, and really provide a service in the core of the city that we don't otherwise have, but we've got certainly the capacity to have it. We've got miles and kilometers of shoreline in our downtown. We should maximize the use of it.
Most definitely, I would agree with that for sure. Now, another commitment that you had put forward was to conduct due diligence on the potential of a police services station downtown. Now, I did see that the police board has approved the hire of 17 officers, and there is still discussion of establishing a station downtown with a dedicated platoon. What is the timeline for that?
So the 17 officers is a budget request. They intended to include some of them in this year's budget, but because of the limited number of training spaces they have available to them at the Ontario Police College, or Elmer as it's commonly known. The request was actually bumped to next year. So the process of hiring 17 new officers won't begin until after 2024. But they did have in their budget for this year the establishment of a downtown police station, and so they are investigating available space downtown. And I believe that they hope sometime within the course of the year to have a police presence in the downtown with the existing officers that they've got. So they'll probably start some of the officers in the downtown core and start some of them at the second line stations, so that there is immediately or sometime within this calendar year a police station in the downtown core.
Now, as to the vision for an established station downtown, would that operate as more or less a satellite from the police station proper, or would it be, you know, a standalone sort of, you know, its own station?
So there's a couple different ways you can do it. I think in the immediate term, they're looking to set something up that is a bit of a satellite office, if you can call it that. But their building on Second Line is 53 years old, 54 years old.
Yes.
And it's, you know, doesn't meet accessibility requirements. The HVAC system is, you know, works in part of the building and works less well in other parts of the building because there have been additions onto the building through the years. There's barely any insulation on the building because of the years that it was built. And so they will need, in the long term, a new police station to meet the needs of a modern police service. But that is, you know, probably a 10-year project or more. And so they are, I think, wanting to lay the groundwork for that, while at the same time immediately putting a presence in the downtown. And I've said in the past that I want to see the permanent police station built in the downtown. But if that's not going to be for 10 or 15 years because it's going to take all this time to plan and raise the money for, then in the interim, I'm happy to see a bit of a stopgap measure.
Okay, fantastic. Now, as well, some other initiatives that have been occurring during this term for you, the reestablishment of the connection between Sault, Michigan and Sault, Ontario, the first meeting held collaboratively since 2017. So, what are some of the initiatives that we can hope will come out of that? Because I mean, I do believe at one time the two communities did collaborate quite successfully on a number of initiatives. Is that a renewed hope? Like, will we be moving forward with Sault, Michigan?
Yeah, the hope is, and it's not just Sault, Michigan, really. We've got, so Sault, Michigan, we've held a joint meeting with. We have historically held joint Christmas parties with their council and ours, and we finally have done that again this year, also the first time in some time. COVID really, you know, we couldn't cross the border for a good period of time, so it hampered our ability to do so. But we've also got joint economic development initiatives underway with Garden River. We're working very closely with Batchewana First Nation to, you know, establish some projects that we can jointly collaborate on. So the hope is that with new leadership in Batchewana, new leadership in Garden River, new leadership in Sault Ste. Marie for the last year, and a renewed ability to connect with our neighbors across the river, that we can see some growth for the entire area, and not just you know, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, to the exclusion of others. So I do think that there is opportunity with Sault, Michigan for joint, you know, tourism initiatives. I know that they've got big events happening around Engineers Day, which is around the same time as the Bridge Walk, which is around the same time as Canada Day and the same time as the 4th of July. So it, you know, presents an opportunity. You've got lots of activity going on to be able to maybe tap into some of what's existing over there, some of what's existing over here, and build on it.
So you have also been participating in meetings with Northern Ontario large urban mayors. What are those meetings? You know, like what is the goal in attending these meetings? Like, is it just kind of sharing, you know, challenges and success stories?
So that's a bit of it. I think there's good collaboration that goes on throughout the year with the CAOs who meet regularly, and with our economic development teams and our tourism teams. But the leadership of the 5 communities, Thunder Bay, North Bay, Timmins, Sudbury, and Sault Ste. Marie, are engaged in specific issues that affect all of us. So we've met twice so far in the last year. The outcomes or the push that we have made from both of those meetings have been focused on supervised consumption or consumption and treatment services, as they're often called, on the needs of Northern Ontario to be, considered more uniquely than the needs of Southern Ontario. Recently, we saw the City of Toronto created or came to an agreement with the province on the uploading of the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway, and a resolution to the dispute between the two of them on Ontario Place, because they've got the government's ear directly. And it's often said that Queen's Park governs from Toronto, and I think that this is perfect evidence of it. So when lowly old Sault Ste. Marie or lowly old Thunder Bay tries to get Queen's Park's ear, it doesn't always work successfully. But when the five of us come and represent, practically 1 million people in Northern Ontario, then we have more attention from the provincial government than we might otherwise have.
Now, I do, with Algoma Steel very busily working towards, reduced carbon footprint, I did cover that we were in a situation where the grid that we have, the existing grid, would be inadequate to supply what would be required to operate the arc furnace once it comes online. Now, do you feel that it was solely the work of yourself and City Council that was able to kind of change that trajectory, or did that also involve working with the other mayors?
So I would say that much of the credit belongs to the team effort that was carried out on that issue, and it was not just Sault Ste. Marie, and it was not really just our neighbors that helped us make the pitch, but it was the PUC had a real substantial role in the advocacy and the work with IESO, which is the Independent Electricity System Operator, to advocate for Algoma Steel's needs. Algoma had their own government relations team working just on this file to make sure that when they are ready to fire up the electric arc furnaces sometime in 2026, the power will be available. The city did its advocacy, and I would say played a crucial role in that. But without a coordinated approach, we probably wouldn't have seen the success that we did. And it was really the three or more or multiple parties that were advocating on this issue that got it done.
Okay, fantastic. Well, so looking forward then into this next year, if you had to identify your top 2 priorities, what would those be?
We're still working to try and get more services available in our community for addiction and mental health, the addiction and mental health needs, which are a growing need in our community and continue to grow and have continued to grow since 2020. So the return of the concurrent day treatment program and or the establishment of consumption and treatment services, those 2 things I think are critical pieces of the pie for us to be able to offer a whole menu of services to people who are in our community that need addiction and mental health help. We saw this year some great success with the opening of the Withdrawal Management Center at Northway. We've seen, good uptake on the RAM clinic, the Rapid Access Addiction Clinic. And there are other complementary services in town that work in that field, but we need the same or as good of services as they've got elsewhere, and other places have the concurrent program, and other places have supervised consumption sites, and those are 2 areas where the municipal government is going to be focused on lobbying the province, because it is the province that does that work. It's the province that has to fund and approve those things, but we will continue to work with the hospital, with the healthcare providers in our community to lobby for those efforts. On the municipal front, we just passed a budget a couple weeks ago, and it maintains municipal services. The focus, I think, will continue to be on the development of housing, the incentivizing of housing, the ensuring that our host or selection of incentives is as good as anywhere else in the province, and hopefully see additional units built in the community.
So as those incentives are applied and potentially accepted by property owners, do you see that perhaps making the rental, like having a ripple effect and making the rental opportunities elsewhere less aggressive?
Yeah, I think that having additional units in the pipeline or in the stock of city housing is only going to help. So if you build more houses, that will free up people who are currently renting that buy a house and free up those units. If you build more rental units, it is obviously going to, maybe allow people to sell their house and move into a rental unit, which will free
Right.
up, starter level homes for people who need them. So I think supply is one of the key, if not the most important ingredient in the housing recipe.
Okay, fantastic. So, two very worthy goals, definitely, and it has certainly been my pleasure to speak with you, and I'm very grateful that you were able to take time from your very busy schedule. So, thank you very much, Matthew. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.